Federal Executive Council approves committee on enhancement of infrastructure financing in the country.
National Assembly engages relevant stakeholders on the contents of the 2019 appropriation bill. Presidential Election Petition Tribunal grants Atiku Abubakar leave to serve President Buhari by substituted means. And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus, managing electoral victory, enters its second part.
All right, there have been numerous reports of politicians celebrating their election victory. And while, of course, it is good to give thanks, whether in a place of worship, on the street, or in a marketplace, one question to ask is, what truly does electoral victory mean?
And I'm sure it's not just about emerging victorious at the polls and celebrating Kingsley. Being victorious means trust has been placed on the candidate by the electorate, and that comes with a lot of responsibilities. Some say the main task before victorious politicians should be how best to fulfill their campaign promises and live up to the expectation of the people. So, after all, the congratulatory messages and celebrations, when should electoral victors start delivering on their promises to the people?
Another question, Jumai, is how should those who have won the elections relate with those who lost? You know, some politicians, as it were, are already insisting on winner-take-all, which, of course, some are arguing hasn't been quite helpful in our polity, but that in instances where there has been cooptation of the losers, the outcome has been beneficial. And in particular, a lot is said to have happened during the 2019 electioneering campaigns, particularly to those who are now winners and then also those who are losers. One question, therefore, to ask again is, how magnanimous should the winners be in victory? And how can both sides, as it were, work together for a better Nigeria?
Indeed, Kingsley, an election fought well and some won. What lessons have Nigerian politicians learned from the 2019 elections and its fallout? How prepared is the political class? And how prepared are the winners and losers to work together for national building? How politically invested and patriotic will the losers be in a winner-take-all situation?
All right, we'll have our guests who will be joining us again today for the second part of this conversation, which we began yesterday. Indeed, we had a very robust conversation with all our guests today. We, of course, expect no less from our guests who will be joining us on the program. That will be in our conversation segment. Of course, my name is Kingsley Osadolo. I'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are right here at the Abuja headquarters studios.
And I am Jumai Yusuf. Thank you for joining us on the program. And as usual, we shall bring you our complimentary segments, which include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign and entertainment news. But first, let's join Comfort Amodu for the morning news. Hello, Comfort. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Jumai and Kingsley. Good to see you both. And a very good morning to Nigerians. Here is the morning news. The Federal Executive Council has approved the establishment of a high-powered committee of ministers and heads of other relevant governmental agencies towards identifying ways and means of significantly enhancing the financing of infrastructure in the country. This is aimed at fast-tracking ongoing efforts by the federal government at addressing the nation's infrastructure deficit for sustainable growth and development of the economy. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Okechukwu Enelama, announced the approval at a media briefing after the Council's meeting in Abuja.
The infrastructure spending increased to the $10 to $20 billion range per year over the next 5 to 10 years, because we think that's the level of our needs. But obviously, government cannot do it alone. So we want to partner with other stakeholders to do it.
And meanwhile, the federal government has approved over 1.3 billion naira for the procurement of necessary equipment for the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, FRCN, and the News Agency of Nigeria, NAN. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, who announced this while briefing journalists after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council, said this is the first major intervention by the government for enhanced service delivery in the media organizations for a very long time.
To know that in the last 20 years, only twice has an attempt been made to upgrade the equipment of the NTA. Therefore, there's been a need for quite a long time to upgrade the equipment to perform its duty of safeguarding democracy, of disseminating news.
The Federation Accounts Allocation Committee, FAC, this Wednesday approved the distribution of 619.857 billion naira for distribution to the 3 tiers of government, given a breakdown of the distribution. Director Funds at the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, Mohammed Kudu Usman, said revenue accrued in the month of February was 26.8 billion naira, lower than what was generated in January.
4.176 billion naira, being the balance on the Forex equalization account, was added to this, including exchange gain difference of 858 million naira. The balance in the excess crude account as of 27th March 2019 is $183 million.
He dismissed insinuations that the federal government is facing challenges with salary obligations, assuring that payments would commence promptly. The annual budget is the most important piece of legislation in democracies and an embodiment of financial policy that gives direction to the national economy. In recognition of this and to give Nigerians a sense of belonging, the National Assembly engaged relevant stakeholders on the contents of the 2019 appropriation bill.
That the appropriations bill is submitted not later than September of the preceding year, which would give the legislature ample time to process the document and pass it in good time.
And we said we would engage the National Assembly, even as we are processing the budget. If information comes to, if we get information that suggests that this price is not conservative enough.
The essence of monitoring checks and balances, be it in public or private organizations, is to ensure accountability, efficiency, and of course, optimal performance. House of Representatives Committee on Public Accounts reiterated this when the Auditor General of the Federation, Anthony Ayine, appeared before budget defense.
Things you have in your budget, will they add to efficiency? Are they going to be effective if implemented? What value would it add to Nigerians?
Appropriation for 2018 was 1.947 billion approximately. Our proposal for 2019 was 3.036 billion approximately.
And the House Committee on Environment and Habitat has ordered the distribution of the over 800,000 abandoned gas and kerosene stoves procured by the Ministry of Environment as alternative cooking energy to firewood. The committee, during its oversight, discovered the stoves abandoned at the Nigerian National Park Service, Abuja, since 2016.
What can be done is for the contractor and the ministry to negotiate and agree on terms acceptable to both of them, so that these things can be released to the public and then people can make use of it.
Going by the resolution of the All Progressives Congress, the leadership tussle ahead of the inauguration of the 9th National Assembly, particularly on the Senate leadership within the party, has been laid to rest. The party's National Publicity Secretary, Lanre Issa Onilu, at a press conference in Abuja, said Senate leader Ahmed Lawan, representing Yobe North, is the party's choice candidate for the Senate presidency for the 9th Senate.
an interaction with the senators-elect, with the presidents, governors, and leaders of the party, and NWC members, where it was presented to the stakeholders that the ruling party has decided on who would be the next Senate president. It's left for the party to cross the T's and dot the I's.
And that concludes the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues in a moment with Kingsley and Jumai.
Me, I am ready for the party. Oh yeah, I want to be smart. I go really early. Oh, I know your story. I go yaba to buy material. I go time my daily. Yeah. I go no say I don't care. If you see my girl, it go on everybody. Let me guide you to yellow. Let me guide you to yellow. Let me guide you to yellow. Let me guide you to yellow.
3G is great. 4G is better. You don't know what you're missing till you experience it. Upgrade to a 4G device and SIM, SMS Get to 141 to enjoy double data on Nigeria's widest 4G network.
Airtel, the smartphone network. Getting around heartburn and indigestion can be tricky if you eat too much. Eat food that is too spicy or greasy, or lie down after eating. Heartburn and indigestion could always be around the corner. When they come, be prepared with Gaviscon Double Action. It works within 3 minutes and lasts up to 8 hours. Gaviscon Double Action. Many causes, one solution.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Thomas Damaden and Ishak Modibo-Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA Standard Studio, ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency caution. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Business News is next with Comfort Amadu.
Governor of the bank, Godwin Emefiele, who gave the assurance during a media parley in Abuja and laid concerns that the Naira is under pressure. He stated that the bank is studying global events, especially with the continued trade war between the United States and China, as well as the realignments in capital flows occasioned by Brexit.
We've seen stability in the market over the last 2.5 years, and there's no need for anybody to worry. We will withstand any pressure. You also asked, is Nigeria prepared for any? My sister, we went through it in 2015, 2016, and into 2017. With the support of everybody, our management, our MPC members were able to overcome those challenges. And I do not think that there is any challenge that this NPC or management or CBN cannot surmount.
With stable accretion to the external reserves, which stood at $45.2 billion as at March 21st, 2019, the governor is confident of the country's stability, and the need to build more resilient economies and prioritize domestic revenue mobilization efforts to triple current rates of growth was brought to the fore at a one-week-long ministers' conference from the Economic Commission for Africa in Marrakech. The conference suggests that an increase of 12.20% in tax collection can raise up to $400 billion and go a long way in funding $600 billion financing gap Africa faces. But that will also require fiscal prudence to strengthen a social compact between government and its people. The African Continental Free Trade Area was also a key topic of discussion, with the initiative now on the brink of being operationalized. And it requires 22 countries to ratify the agreement, and during the event, Ethiopia ratified it, bringing the total number to 21 countries. And trades on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange on Tuesday, 27th of March, depreciated by 0.67% to close at 30,829.45 basis points against 0.01% depreciation recorded previously. Its year-to-date returns currently stands at minus 1.91%.
All right, thank you very much, Comfort Amodo, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria today. Next for us now, we take a look at the stories on the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Ateobi, is in the studio. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jumai. Good morning.
Good morning,
Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah, Bayo, good to see you. As we'll expect, stories on politics continue to dominate the front pages. Leadership of the incoming 9th Assembly, the supplementary elections in Adamawa, plus others, as well as, of course, the Zamfara situation. Let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper lead story says AIG leads security as Adamawa decides today. AIG leads security as Adamawa decides today, with the rider APC PDP trade words over plot to disrupt polls. Details of the story continue on page 5, but on the front page there, you have the graphic illustration of what is at the moment, and therefore what is also up for grabs. You can see the illustration there using the bar chart. Says Adamawa results before the March 9 election was declared inconclusive. APC candidate has 334,905 and PDP has 367,471. That's a difference of 32,476. And then other papers, of course, have additional insights into that story. Take a look, for instance, at the Punch. Right at the foot of the front page of the Punch, you have a story there. It says 40,998 voters to decide Adamawa next governor today. Punch is reporting that nearly 41,000 voters will be deciding the governor, with the PDP already having a lead of over 32,000. Now, we also have other stories, as I indicated, on other aspects of politics. This time we get back to the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, it says, our decision on Lawan final and PDP's votes unnecessary. That's according to the APC. With the rider, I'll contest Deputy Senate presidency, says Kalu. Kalu is a former governor of Abia and one of the senators elect. Then an earpiece there beside the nameplate of the Punch. My post-election resolution is to avoid controversies, says Sanusi. Sanusi is the emir of Kano. And PDM candidate asks tribunal to void Buhari's victory and other fresh polls. Still on the Senate leadership, for the 9th Assembly. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph. Lead story says with a kicker, APC, we won't allow voting for National Assembly leadership. And says Wajabi Amila, not yet party's candidate for speakership. Kalu, I already read that from the Punch newspaper. And then lastly, a writer there, Lawan's choice, a product of consultations. That's according to the Senate spokesperson.
Yes.
No, let's take your own stories. I think you have those.
Yeah, I have those the same stories on the Nigerian pilots. We have Oshomole asks court to dismiss suit seeking to probe him. That's on page 9. Tanker accident kills 3 persons, injures 8 in Anambra. Federal Road Safety Commission expresses worry. And the headline says, Lawan's Senate presidency not negotiable by the APC. Well, the rider says party chose him after due consultations consensus. Insist all interests must bow to party supremacy. Orji Kalu defies party, joins race for Deputy Senate President. Wants Deputy Senate President zone to Southeast. Insist APC can't stop his ambition. That's on page 8. And the picture story says says Children of Divine Wounds of Jesus Christ Orphanage and Rehabilitation after their home was demolished by the FCT Development Control in Kubwa, Abuja yesterday. Presidential Tribunal, Atiku gets order for substituted service as 3 more presidential candidates file petition to oust Buhari. That's on page 5. And just below the masthead, we have, I have no intention to challenge Bala Muhammad's victory, Bauchi governor. Group stacks Buhari on early completion of Southeast roads on page 40. Poor implementation of budget worries stakeholders as Dogara urges 70% implementation. That's on page 8. Federal government to design DPR headquarters with 1.4 billion naira. That's on page 6. No plan to amend constitution for Buhari's 3rd term, says Lawal. That's on page 6. And Senate to Buhari, invest in stopping corruption, not in fighting it. And the Daily Sun has as its bold headlines, 9th Senate presidency, no going back on Lawal. With the rider says PDP won't get any committee chairmanship except minority leader, public accounts. It is too early to say what will happen from the BTB. That's on page 6. And then we still have the picture story of the orphanage. Beside the picture message, we have Tribunal grants Atiku PDP permission to serve Buhari through APC. 3 other candidates challenge presidential election results. I will run for Deputy Senate President Kalu on page 29. Strike, FG, ASU resume negotiation. That's on page 40. 2019 budget, National Assembly won't be rubber stamp. Dogara, that's on page 40.
Well, let's start on the human interest angle, particularly about the orphanage that you read and that was demolished in Kubwa. It's very touching. Apparently, there's a civil case there over land tussle where the orphanage was standing. But the social department of the Ministry of the Federal Capital Territory should be of concern about the orphans that have been thrown out now. And so they should make arrangements to make sure that those orphans have a house over their head. But meanwhile, the story that is dominating is the tussle over the Senate leadership. The Senate caucus of the People's Democratic Party say no outsider will play any role in electing Senate President in the 9th National Assembly. Senate Minority Leader Biodun Olujimi and Chairman of FCT Committee Dino Melai in the joint statement says no one outside the Senate has any role to play. Every senator has a right as provided for in the Constitution to aspire to be a leader in the National Assembly. They admonished against dragging the incumbent presiding officer into their scheme. A caucus had actually indicated that there's a plot to seek for a former governor who are senators, many of them, to head the Senate presidency. This is said to have been allegedly inspired by the incumbent. Meanwhile, the All Progressive Congress has categorically stated that the decision to endorse a candidate as Senate president was taken after consultation nationwide, and the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressive Congress, Isa Onilu, says it is not the decision of the party chairman or the National Working Committee alone. However, that the All Progressive Congress will not share power with the PDP and at the National Assembly. He says specifically, there is no room for power sharing in a presidential system of government as currently practiced in Nigeria. He accused the People's Democratic Party of exhibiting gross ignorance of party politics. Incidentally, for the 16 years that the People's Democratic Party were in charge at the National Assembly, no other party member participated in heading the legislature. That's what obtained that. The only aberration is what we have now, where you have a deputy Senate president who is not of the majority party. Issa Onilu actually cited an instance in the United States where the majority, a leader in the legislature had to step down when the party lost majority and become a minority leader in the legislature.
Yes, that's fine. But if you recall the Second Republic, remember what happened?
Yes, those were alliances.
Alliances, yes. NPN and NPP. When Chief Umezoke, Edward Umezoke, was made Speaker of the House of Reps. Okay. So unless you have an alliance now, then that's not likely to materialize.
Adamawa is one of the two states, and Adamawa is about to go. And the tussle today is over the difference of about 32,476 votes. And the voters that are supposed to settle that constitute about 40,778 voters if they all come out to vote today. So hopefully, through the process of collation, in another 24 hours or 48 hours, we will have that result. The only one that will be outstanding will be Rivers State, and that should be resolved by April 15th, according to Independent National Electoral Commission.
Hopefully.
On the issue of budget, Speaker Yakubu Gurara says when the Senate resumes plenary by April 22nd, it is hoped that the 2019 budget will have been passed. He also enjoined the executive to change the trend of submitting budget proposal late, and also admonished that the ministries, department, and agencies should not be prompted by the presidency before they come up for budget defense. He cautioned that heads of MDA refusing to appear are part of the causes of the delay in the budget. He concluded that the executive must also muster the will to implement budget when passed diligently. He said that the budget performance rate for many unbroken years has been abysmally very, very poor. Constituency project, too, has become a matter of concern. The president is said to be interested in timely and effective execution of zonal intervention and constituency projects. The permanent secretary for special duties in the office says that delays in poor execution of constituency projects will not be condoned. Engineer Festus Dauda says that special duties office is to verify, monitor, and evaluate all constituency projects because they are optimally intended to be realized for grassroots democratic dividends. The representative of the Secretary to the Governments of the Federation in the Special Services Office, Hajia Amina Bello, says that the office will monitor and guard against any poor implementation of such constituency projects, and it also verify all processes of payment. So there's due diligence between the National Assembly, the legislature, and the executive to ensure that budget processes are effectively implemented. So check and balances in operation.
Okay, Bayo, other stories now from the Punch, right at the foot of the front page. Just before we go to the foot of the front page of the Punch, there's a story on power, by the way, that's above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper. One of the stories there says, no incentive to increase power generation. Say Gencos. Gencos are the electricity generating companies. And details of that story can be found on page 28. Now, back to the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper. Two stories were taken from there. Federal government ASU resume renegotiation of 2009 pact. Details of that can be found on page 9. And then inside, killer of ex-Ondo deputy governor's daughter sentenced to death. Bayo will take a look at that story. Army rescues 6 abducted Kasina clerics. Details can be found inside. And then for the New Telegraph newspaper, below the nameplate, we'll take one headline from there. Or Tom, it says, my greatest mistake was making Akume my godfather. Details can be found on page 36. And then right to the foot of the front page of the New Telegraph newspaper, this is another story. It says, fees, that's the kicker. School proprietress to pay 25 million naira for caning pupil. And 5-year-old victim loses eye to flogging. You can see the photograph there on the front page illustrating that story. Details can be found on page 8. School proprietress to pay 25 million naira for caning pupil. Not just the caning, the fact that the pupil lost her eye in the process of that flogging. Bayo.
And it's sad, you know, why was the pupil caned? For not paying school fees. Why do you punish a child for not paying school fees? The same thing happened in Delta about 2 weeks ago, when a small girl, Success, was sent out of school for school fees. And the poor girl said that, I'm going to go to school many times and they can continue caning me until they are tired. Because why punish a child? And in this instance, in the process of flogging the child, I think the cane hit the child in the right eye, and the girl eventually lost the right eye. And the father went to court, and the court ruled that that school proprietor will pay 25 million for the poor girl's one eye that is lost. So, well, corporal punishment in our schools is a problem. Sometimes it is taken into into their extremes, and this has to be checked. And I think this will be a lesson to many school proprietors.
Yes, I don't know when because it's a private school, apparently.
Yes,
it's a private school. I don't know when it became fashionable to inflict corporal punishment on a child or a pupil who has not paid his or her school fees. The simple practice is to deny the child admittance. Yes, admittance into the class.
Not admittance, write to the parents so that they know the child cannot come to school. What is the child is allowed to go home and the parents don't pick the child? What happens in between?
Well, that's fine, you know. But what part of what used to happen in those days, particularly if the school, you see that in Lagos, in some of the schools where the pupils have not paid their fees, they put them into the school bus and then drop them at home. Of course, they also inform their parents. Yes. You know, flogging a pupil who has not paid the school fees is not part of it.
No, it's
when we were in elementary school, we were paying school fees, nobody flogged you. Yes. I mean, if you didn't pay, I didn't run into that challenge. Nobody flogged you for not paying your fees. Yeah. Or if you didn't pay, you will be asked to stay away. There used to be what was called lesson. You know, there were extra classes you have at the end of the. At the end of school, usually it will be in the evenings. I don't remember how much it was now, but it was £1 or so per term. But if you didn't pay that, nobody will allow you, to get into class.
In some schools, they exclude those who are owing fees from the classroom. Yes. They'll put them in another place until it is closing time so their parents can pick them. Because if you send them away, you are not sure whether they are going home or not, and anything can happen.
I don't understand this flogging thing,
actually. The other concern is the issue of the social media. This Tribune has listed that the Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms, among others, have published that certificate of return has been issued to Senator Ademola Adeleke, who the tribunal rules is the governor that is supposed to be elected for Osun State. However, the INEC National Commissioner of Voter Education, Festus Okoye, has clarified that no certificate has been so issued. He cited Section 143 of the Electoral Act that the candidates whose election is set aside has 21 days within which to appeal. And guess what? The picture that is being circulated on the social media is that of Senator Adeleke when he won election in 2017 as a senator, and he was presented his certificate of return. And that has been put on the social media on a platform that is called Galata Media, Puro Report, AIG Media Pro, and several others claiming that that is just. So one needs to be very careful on what you get on the social media. A corollary to that is that an alarm has also been raised on the same social media about fake Hajj fares for 2019. The National Hajj Commission has not announced Hajj fare for 2019, but already there are fake Hajj fees ranging to about 1.5, some are speculating 1.8, others 1.9 million on the social media. And the Hajj Commission says that it has not formally made any announcement of this. So you need to take every story you hear on the social media with a pinch of salt. 737 MAX Air in the news again. There was a plane, a Boeing 737 MAX Air aircraft, took off from Florida, and immediately after takeoff, the pilot raised alarm and he had to return. It was the plane was being moved for safekeeping because it's been supposed to be withdrawn. But the pilot and the co-pilot noticed a malfunction and they quickly returned. There was no incident. But it confirms the danger with MAX 737 airline. On the social media again, there is a system by which when you are to travel by air, you feed onto a platform to know the kind of aircraft that is conveying you, and then you advise her to check. If it indicates 737 MAX Air, then you can make a decision otherwise.
That's very, very good information.
Well, I saw that earlier, but you do know that there can be a change of planes.
Yes, certainly.
So what happens?
If there's a change of plane and it is not indicated,
when you're on transit,
no, when you have already checked in, you don't say that you want.
Better check out.
Let's go to the editorial.
No need to frighten anybody. Air travel remains the fastest and safest means of travel.
It is the safest. Right.
Now we go to the editorial, and it's from the Daily Independent. It's still on transportation. Fast-tracking completion of Lagos-Ibadan rail line. The Lagos-Ibadan segment of the Lagos-Kano railway system is of immense economic significance. That the continuing slowdown in its completion is unacceptable. The Lagos-Ibadan Railway is part of an ambitious national rail development project meant to revamp the national rail system to foster rapid economic growth in the country. The commissioning date of the rail line has been repeatedly postponed for sundry reasons, which include vandalization of the rail tracks and delay in fund release. The editorial is saying that the Lagos-Ibadan rail line is the prime artery for moving people and products out of the mega city of Lagos and its premier port, and therefore deserves special consideration for its urgent completion.
Yes, indeed. The rail is a standard gauge rail, which is supposed to be the most ultra-modern. By standard gauge, the speed, the rapidity with which the train will move can be faster than the old gauge. However, the 156-kilometer rail line project of standard gauge is to cost 1.53 billion. And it started in 2012, and up to 2016, nothing had been done. And so far, when it started again now in March 2017, the expected date of completion was December 2018. However, by last December, it was only able to get to Abeokuta, and initiatives are on to ensure that it gets to Ibadan. But the editorial is admonishing that, yes, the initiative to have rail infrastructure is very important, but the government should also be careful not to overreach itself. It cites the tremendous and elaborate rail infrastructure development that is programmed by the administration, particularly from Lagos to Kano and also from Port Harcourt through all the southeastern states, touching every state capital up to Maiduguri. This is very ambitious, but it says that the administration has to be very careful so that it does not overreach itself. It, however, stresses that the completion of the Lagos-Ibadan rail line is very tremendous for human and goods evacuation. Particularly, it will go a long way to help decongest the Lagos port.
All right, Baya Tebe, I'd like to thank you for being around. See you again tomorrow.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Baya.
It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with how to manage electoral victory. This is the second part of the conversation which began yesterday.
The dynamics of modern media management require top-of-the-mind administrators. Accordingly, NTA TV College JOS invites administrative officers on grade levels 8 to 12 in private and public media organizations to a 2-week intensive capacity building course on fundamentals of media administration. Date 1st to 12th April 2019. Course fee 80,000 naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. Venue NTA TV College premises, Rayfield, JOS. Take advantage of the course to empower your administrative officers with modern skills for maximum performance. For further inquiries, contact 0803 314 4383 or 0806 980 9807. NTA TV College JOS, training you to be the best you want to be.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Thomas Daba Ben and Ishak Modibo Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG. Transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency, calls for TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
You are watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. Before we introduce our guest today, let's see some clips from yesterday's discussion on the first part of the topic, Managing Electoral Victory, as put together by Sarafina Okon.
I remember in 2007, when Eradua got elected, he really came up with the idea of all-inclusiveness. He invited all the other political parties. He wrote to my party, MPP, and please come and join hands with me. It's not the issue of I'll give you minister this or advisor this. No, the issue was that let's come together and see what went wrong. It was my party, we gave 6 conditions for him to accept, and one of it was the electoral process has to be reviewed. It was an AMPP's idea that led to the Ways Committee. It was part of our condition, and he respected it. And another thing, as an opposition leader there, as an opposition governor, I was in AMPP, Eradua was PDP, he invited all the governors. He said, there is nothing I will not do without all of you. We've won election now, let's forget about our parties. And you'll be surprised. He said there is no one appointment I will make in any state without consulting you.
You ensure that whatever you are going to put in must be participatory and all-inclusive. For instance, when I got my first tenure, what I did was, of course, during the party primaries, we were almost 10 in number that contested for the chairmanship. And I made sure that at least 8 or 9 of them joined me in government. Because they may not be chairmen, but they have one or 2 responsibilities that they can as well carry out. And that was a way of, healing the wounds.
It's not whether it's easy or difficult. It is in the best interest, even of those people, even of the ruling party, to have this we mentality. Because whether we like it or not, the race for the next election has started. And the way you manage your victory and bring people in, and of course, there's one area of managing the victory which is service orientation. Because if you manage the victory, you settle all security risk people, but you don't deliver services to the people, it will be challenging.
Whoever got declared or that won should first think, his thinking mood now should be we, not I. Because this attitude of I, my, me, is not as impactful as when you have the mentality of we.
All right, Serafina Okon, thank you very much there for the excerpts from yesterday's conversation on the first part of our topic, which is managing electoral victory. Of course, you listened to what some of the guests had to say yesterday. Today already, we have another set of guests to begin discussing the subject. First, let's welcome Chief Achike Udenwa, His Excellency, former Governor of Imo State. Your Excellency, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
Okay. Also here with us this morning is Professor Osareme Osumbo. Of course, he's a lawyer, 2-time senator of the Federal Republic, and also former governor of Edo State. Both of them, of course, regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Professor Osumbo, pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure too. Good morning.
Okay.
And also with us here in the studio is Professor Tahir Momman, Vice Chancellor of Bayes University, Abuja. And in our Ibadan studio, we have Dr. Mohammed Kola Balogun, a senator-elect representing Oyo South Senatorial District. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, sir. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, once again, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria. You listened to the excerpts of yesterday's conversation. And some would say that electoral victory is sweet and sometimes intoxicating. But how challenging is it to manage electoral victory in our polity? Let's begin with former Governor of Imo State.
Thank you. Managing electoral victory is as difficult as winning the election itself. It's not easy at all. You have too many things to reconcile. You have so many people to look after. You have the electorate to satisfy. You have your party people who work for you to look after. And then it depends whether you are a newly elected person or you are re-elected, and whether it is for the executive or for the legislature. I want to assume that we're talking about the executive, because for the legislator, not too much problem, not too much expectations. But for the executive, that's where the main problem comes. I would want to look even more at the newly elected governors, because their own problems are much higher than the old ones. The old ones, if you are an old governor coming back for the second tenure, you need more to review your activities in the first tenure, to review your appointments in the first tenure, and begin to see where you make adjustments. But for somebody who has just come in as a brand new governor, maybe he has not been in government, or maybe he has been in government. But it is a different ball game to say you are now the chief executive of the state. A lot is expected of you, a lot of maturity, a lot of humility, a lot of man management. So much is expected of you. So you've got to sit back, look at what is on the ground, where are you starting. Don't be in a terrible hurry, because at times you find people are in a hurry. You say first 100 days in office, which doesn't mean much. To me, it is nonsense to talk about the first 100 days, because by the first 100 days, the chief executive has not even understood the state is ruling. So these are the stark realities. So you take your time, make your plan, and then move ahead. First and foremost, you may need to establish a transition committee. This transition committee will give you an idea of what is currently on the ground. They would also look at your manifesto, your philosophy, and be able to say, okay, this is the direction you should go. This is what you should do here. This is where the last government stopped. And even look at the finances, because a lot of your achievement will depend on what amount of finances are available to you. So this transition committee has a lot of work to do. Then you begin to talk of your first appointments. That's another big challenge. Whom are you appointing? There are a lot of people who have worked for you, but you must also know that there are people who have worked for you, who are very good politicians, but may not be able to make good administrators. So all these you have to weigh vis-a-vis the positions.
All right, Your Excellency, Chief Achike Udenwa, thank you very much. Let's also now bring in His Excellency Professor Usereme Osumbo. Professor Osumbo, give us your sense of what it means to manage electoral victory.
Well, when you talk about managing electoral victory, it presupposes we are looking at the victors, those who have emerged victorious. And I would classify them as one, the candidate himself or herself, elected into position, whether legislative or executive position. Then the political party is also victorious. You find that when election results are announced, the candidate is happy, is jubilating that he's been elected, he has won, he has been victorious. The political party is also victorious. Now the political parties are happy looking at the figures that they control in the various legislative houses and in the position of chief executives of the state. So political parties come into play when you are talking about managing electoral victory. And then society itself. You know that there were a lot of doomsday predictions about Nigeria, what might happen, what could happen. But we thank God that the worst did not materialize. There were some incidences of violence, but it is very significant compared to the magnitude that was being predicted would happen in Nigeria. So these are the various categories of victors. So how do they best manage the electoral victory? Both those who commented yesterday and even His Excellency Chief Achikudewa has mentioned the need to be magnanimous in victory. You don't have to see it as a defeat for those who lost. And Mr. President set a very good tone in this area when, after his victory, his election, he did advise that people should celebrate in moderation. And it was not the fact that you have won, you have been victorious, is enough for you to be happy about without trying to mock or cast aspersions on those who lost elections. That is the right chord to strike in order to set about managing the electoral victory well. If you cast your minds back even to the military transitions, then I remember in 1999, the military actually warned that those who were victorious must not celebrate, don't go into the streets, and those who lose must not protest, otherwise they will be dealt with. That tended to calm nerves and ensure that people were happy. You have a right to be joyous when you are victorious in election, but do it with moderation in order that those who lost don't become bitter or resentful. Once you make that mistake, then you set the tone for problems. So be magnanimous, ensure that it is not winner takes all, because in this environment, there are very many people who are looking up to a role in government, because government controls so many things in Nigeria as in many other developing countries. So the fact that you have been victorious doesn't mean that you should mock or, in fact, spite those who lost. As much as possible, bring them on board. That is for the candidate himself. For the political party, you need to set the tone. Again, you need to set the direction and provide leadership. I say this because Nigeria does not have independent candidacy as of now. Every victory that has been secured in these elections were secured on the platform of political parties. So it is wrong for any candidate who has been victorious to simply, now all of a sudden, give the impression that he did it on his own, because you were not an independent candidate. On the other hand, too, the political parties must provide guidance, because that is required. As I have had occasion to say before in this studio, what Nigeria needs most now is to develop the political party system, because political party system influences the development of democracy in any country. If the political system is weak the democracy itself will be weak. So in periods like this, we expect that the political party leadership must set the tone, lead the way, show leadership in order that the victory can be best managed. Because if they do not manage the victory well, then problems sooner or later will begin to rear up their heads. And then, as I said before, society should see itself as victorious. Nigeria yearned for democracy for so many years. Now we have democracy. With every successive election that proves successful, we have cause to celebrate as a country. So it is a thing of joy. It should be a thing of joy for Nigerians that we are able to manage this transition process properly. The last point I will say at this before I yield is that, yes, we know victories have been secured, but we should also bear at the back of our minds that it is not over until it is over. As I always say, people think that the political process ends with the declaration of results and presentation of a certificate of return. That is not the end. The political process starts with registration of voters and ends where the final court pronounces in the case of those who decide to go to the tribunal or go on appeal to the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, as the case may be. So while we are happy that the process has been successful so far, we should pray that the remaining, the remaining part of the process is also in tandem. Let me put it that way.
It doesn't call for the use of handkerchiefs to mop.
Now let's bring in Professor Tahir Mama into the conversation. After all the victory, the gloating, I have won and everything, the electorate are expecting so much. So if a government, like Mr. Udenwa said, that people might campaign for you, might contribute immensely to your campaign, but might not be good administrators. What if, from another perspective, you see somebody from another political party that can serve very well in that position? Can we have an inclusive government in this country, and is it going to work?
Well, thank you very much. Before I go to answering your question specifically, I want to chip in on the general theme. The election itself was the national agenda, as Prof mentioned. So its success, this is the sixth cycle of our democratic experiment now. So the country has every reason to be proud that it has been able to go through this cycle, despite the unfortunate glitches here and there in terms of loss of life and destruction of property and INEC facilities all over the country. There are also other stakeholders in the project. Apart from the parties, we have the security themselves, which have been really on the spot in ensuring that they provide a suitable environment, safe environment for voters to exercise their mandate. And then INEC itself. INEC will be very happy that they were able to pull this through, despite all the initial fears and, you know, all the things that had happened. So, and then finally on this, the question that a victorious party or person should be asking himself is, what were the success factors, what were the critical factors which led to his success? Why did the opposition lose? We've had situations where sitting governors have lost elections, quite a number of them actually. So the person who won needs to ask himself, why did I win? And what do I need to do to sustain the trust and the mandate which people have entrusted on him or her? And is it developmental? Is it the program of the party? And as we all know, all these virtually people have been dismissive about parties not campaigning on programs, and the parties are all the same. I think it was Ezekwesili who even gave one name. She coined a word of describing APC and PDP to demonstrate that there's no difference between PDP and APC. One may not agree with her on that, and I don't either, because there are a lot of personalities within the parties which make the difference between the two parties. So, and then, so the person has to ask himself about these things, and then make a checklist of what he needs to do in the line of what His Excellency mentioned. And then one of the major considerations which have come into play is managing relationships. Parties, governors, and people in office who are successful and being unable to manage relationships with their parties, relationships with the stakeholders, and then expectations generally from their constituencies. Now, all these things go a lot to assuage, whatever misgivings, whatever sense of loss people have. Now, coming back to your question, should a victorious party individual now reach out? We've had this, even Mr. President said it, that he's interested in having an inclusive system, bringing on board, well, of course, it's not defined what inclusive means, whether it is internally inclusive or externally inclusive. Now, the assumption of a presidential system is different from other systems. It is supposed to be on the basis of particular programs, very clear, providing very clear difference between parties and the person who is actually leading, providing the leadership in governance. So it doesn't necessarily assume that you have to go out to other parties to recruit leadership and lieutenants who will support you in government. But because we are still coming up in terms of nation building and democratically, it helps a lot, particularly now, and since 2015, and even also coming out very emphatically now, or refusing to go away. There's too much of bitterness, too much of hate in the system. And to the extent of the kind of language our politicians use these days, you begin to wonder whether we are actually in the same country, whether people really can sit together and manage their affairs after an election. People wishing others dead, going out to sending out people through thuggery, to maim, to kill, and then using very interpreted language. So this is the time for those who are successful to reach out, because those who lost are already down there. They are very sad and happy, angry, So the responsibility becomes that of those who are successful to reach out to them in different ways. Some of them don't need political offices, actually, but they have people around them who need some level of support. Some just need to be talked to, and so these are the kinds of things which we need to heal the wound that have opened up so much during the campaigns and for the last 5 years in our country. You can't believe what is happening within some communities and individuals, because of differences in politics and that sort of thing. Yeah, and as everybody have said, no Nigerian's life is worth, nobody's aspiration is worth the life of anybody. And so this is the time for us to come together. And as I said, the responsibility is more with the victorious, now to reach out to people and find a way of, working together.
All right, Professor Tahir Mahmoud, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you very much. Let's go over now to our Ibadan Network studios, where we earlier introduced Dr. Kola Balogun. He's a senator-elect, and he will be representing Oyo South in the 9th Assembly. Dr. Kola Balogun, of course, you've listened to the other guests, but let's have your own take on the conceptual implication of managing electoral success.
Thank you. Thank you. First and foremost, let me say good morning, Oyo South Senatorial District. Good morning, Oyo State, and good morning, Nigeria. Well, I think that managing electoral victory is a three-legged thing. You have the party stakeholders, you have the party leadership, they have their hopes and aspirations, and of course you have the elected officials. And then the third one is the people, the voters that gave you the mandate. And so you want to be focused. You want to begin by asking yourself. You have your campaign programs, you have the promises you've made to the electorate in your district, in your constituency, and of course in your state in the case of governorship election. So you must have an understanding with the party leadership. You must know that it is in the best interest of yourself and the party leaders to ensure that the hopes and aspirations of those who elected you into the office are met. So for me, I like to recommend an all-inclusive government. You want to bring in talents from wherever you can find them. It does not matter who it is. But of course, in doing so, you must also consult widely. You must carry the party leadership along, because when you fail to do that, you will get the party structure and the party leadership upset. And of course, they might begin to work against your interest. And when that happens, you collectively will be working against the interests of your constituency or your state, as the case may be. And so the elected officials must ensure that party leaders are carried along, party stakeholders are carried along, but also you must know that you are no longer an elected official who is owned by your party alone. You are owned by the people. You are owned by those who are not card-carrying members of your party. So consultation must be encouraged. And after all, at the end of the day, if you fail to perform, you get the blame. When you fail, when you succeed in performing, of course, you take the credit. And so it is the collective responsibility of all stakeholders, including the elected officials, because the people are waiting. You have made campaign promises, yearnings and aspirations must be met. So for me, it's an all-inclusive approach that we must take. We have a lot of problems in this country. We must switch, as soon as the election is over, we must switch from campaign mode to governance mode. We need to pay serious attention to norms of good governance, accountability, transparency. We need to do things to strengthen our electoral system. We need to ensure that we take steps that will ensure that our judiciary is truly independent in order for us to deepen our democracy. So these are the things we should pay serious attention to. And of course, when you're starting out, you must ensure that all stakeholders are carried along. And that is the way to start.
All right, Senator-elect Dr. Kola Balogun, thank you very much there for your opening salvo. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Gentlemen, from all the points that you have articulated, healing the rift, bearing in mind who the stakeholders are, who the victors are, and those who've lost the elections and how to deal with them, societal expectation, as well as the points made by His Excellency Achike Odenwa. Let's try to begin to narrow some of these things down, to practical realities. Part of what we are dealing with in our society today arises from our electoral system, not necessarily the governance system, which is first past the post. That's whoever wins the election, of course, has all the benefits, virtually as it were. And the call for inclusiveness is something that sometimes some people will perceive to be a challenge. Yesterday, we heard a story from the former governor of Kano, that's Senator-elect Kwankwaso, how he was approached by, Shekarau, thanks a lot, Ibrahim Shekarau. He was here with us, he was actually sitting here. how he was approached by the late President Yaradua, on how they needed to cooperate and collaborate. He was ANPP, and Yaradua was PDP. But in practical terms, how workable is this, whether at the federal or at the state level? Bearing in mind, again, what Professor Osumbo said about societal pressures. Your supporters expect, reward for their hard work, and the victors expect to savor their victory. So how inclusive can inclusiveness be?
Well, I think everything depends on the environment. What is applicable in one state may not be applicable in another state. It depends on the type of opposition you have, because it's possible you had a very overwhelming victory. That may not call for actually inclusiveness unless you see one or two people you think are good in the other side and they can work with you. And where the victory is so narrow, you may find out that there are balance of forces. And that might call for such an inclusiveness. It is good for stability, so that it is not fight all the time. Yeah, just as Shekararu told you, I was in that government. I was a minister under Yaradua, and we had two ANPP ministers in my time, They were part and parcel of our of the cabinet. They contributed, irrespective of the fact that they were from another party. At that time, he called for it. And Yaradua was such a man that did consider stability in whatever he's doing. Because what gave rise to that at the time is that a good proportion of, especially the northwest and northeast, a good proportion belonged to ANPP. Yet, overall, PDP was the majority. So he felt that there was need to give a sense of belonging to those areas that we are ANPP. And it worked well. We were in the cabinet together. Everybody was his brother's keeper. And we didn't have any problems as regards from which party are you coming from. So such things can be done to solve even a local problem. I do agree with it. But there must be also humility from the party you are bringing in. So there has to be, you must recognize you are not running a joint government, that you are there by the grace of the chief executive who has extended a hand of fellowship to you, and you should behave as such. That's also part of the problem where some people might come in and begin to undermine the present government in preparation for the next elections. That's not good enough. There should be reciprocation in the process. I bring you in, but you calm down. It's not a question of every day you are leaking government secrets to the opposition. The opposition is using it against the government. It's not the right thing to do. So I think it's a two-way situation.
Professor Osumbo, I'll be coming to you now. Talking about the legislature and the cabinet, a lot of electorates are saying it took too long last time to get a cabinet, a working cabinet, to hit the ground running. Now they say this government is back. What is going to be different this time around in choosing a cabinet for the government?
Well, again, permit me just to chip in on the last point, really. That there are two, the system that Nigeria has chosen is the first past the post, which envisages on a formal level that it is winner takes all. It is different from
proportional representation.
Exactly. Countries that operate proportional representation. I think Italy is one, maybe South Africa is another one. So those systems are different. So where, say, a president in Nigeria decides to operate something akin to government of national unity, then it is the prerogative of the chief executive in order to ensure that interests as diverse as possible are brought on board. I think that is within his prerogative, which must not be abused, as His Excellency mentioned. And I will recall that even as far back as 1999, President Obasanjo's government started it to the extent that the national chairman of APP at that time became was this special advisor also in his
agriculture.
yes, in his government. Now, how do we ensure that we avoid the kind of lengthy time it took to appoint ministers
in 2015?
In 2015. Again, Mr. President has indicated, he has publicly spoken about it, that he will not make the mistakes that were made in 2015. And he will ensure that ministers are appointed as quickly as possible. Certainly not the kind of delay that we experienced in the past. So he is aware. Again, you can't beat experience. Experience is the best teacher. He has experienced governors being in charge as democratically elected president now for 4 years. Definitely he has benefited from that experience, and he has assured Nigerians that that is going to reflect in the speed with which he constitutes the government, and I believe also carry out other responsibilities of government.
I'm wondering, just before we bring in Professor Tahir Mama, let's practicalize inclusiveness. Your Excellencies, you've both said, well, yes, it's a prerogative of the chief executive, whether at the national or at the subnational level. But how does it play out, considering also some of the points that you guys have articulated here? Consult your stakeholders, consult with the party so that there is no friction ab initio. You've been in that position. How easy is it for you to convince your stakeholders that, look, after all the bruising fight to get elected, here you are calling that person who was hauling all kinds of insults during the course of the campaign, or the other party will say, look, come and be part of us. Again, to put it plainly, in some instances, some will say, oh, come and be part of, you understand what I mean?
Come and show.
Yes, Professor Osumbo first.
Well, it's not easy, really. It's not easy. Especially, as you said, where you find a situation where the contest was very bitter. Again, that is what people say sometimes when you are digging a pit for somebody, don't make it too deep because you may find the need to either bring the person out of it or you bring yourself out of it. And when there is electoral contest or campaigns, let your language be temperate, be moderate, so that you don't say things which hurt, because the words once it comes out, you can never retrieve it. The man may smile at you, but the hurt is still in his mind. So, again, we should, going forward, ensure that people don't resort to extremes, either by way of language or conduct, killings, violence, and so forth and so on. Where people have engaged in serious violence, it will require maybe extra qualities of a man to begin to say, let me bring those kind of people on board. In fact, those who suffered, who were at the receiving end of that kind of thing, will not be happy with you, that you are so magnanimous as to bring in those who hurt them so much. But those are extreme cases. I think the middle is usually not as bad as that, and within that middle, it is easy to accommodate people. Look at those with skills, with talents, because at the end of the day, this is a representative government. You are not there for yourself alone. You are there to serve the people. So if there are talents, if there are people with expertise in area, bring them on board. And by and large, many people will be happy to have been recognized and we cherish an opportunity to be of service to their people. So it's, again, depending on the individual, because some people are more broad-minded than others. Unfortunately, some people are mean, and their meanness didn't just start today. This is a habit that they may have grown with. So it's difficult. Even when the political parties try to intercede, they are impervious to such entreaties. But again, sometimes the political leadership that is contributing to this process might themselves be hard. And you, for instance, as chief executive order of the state, will feel that because you set out to achieve certain things. By the time you are running for office of governor, you have at the back of your mind what you want to do for the people. Sometimes when this is at variance with the thinking of elements within the political leadership, it can be a problem. And that is why sometimes you find that there is conflict between chief executives and the political leadership, because their own perspective to governance is at variance, complete variance with yours. If you are there to serve the people and the political leadership has a completely different agenda, then that is the seed. It sows the seed of instability.
All right, Professor Osumbo, thank you very much. I want to bring in now Professor Tahir Mama. Professor Tahir, now you are seeing the practical challenges arising from managing electoral victory. Let's have your take on this. Again, dealing with part of what you said earlier. Look, the responsibility now in managing electoral success is to try to heal the rift that we have in various communities. But at the same time, Dr. Kola Balogun says, switch from campaign mode to governance mode. If that raises the perspective of inclusiveness, how inclusive can you be? And how can you overcome, as it were, the likely resistance from your party supporters, and in particular, the party apparatchiks?
Well, thank you. We are looking at inclusiveness in terms of patronage now. And patronage of access to offices by party members and other stakeholders. But remember, those who elected the victorious ones are not just the party people. You know, there are usually three segments of the electorate. The party men, those who are sort of non-partisan, don't belong to any of the parties. Okay, and then you now have those in the opposition who would have voted for other candidates. Now, as soon as somebody is elected, he becomes a servant of society, a servant to the community. And so his focus at this time should be on service. Yes, we have a whole range of positions to fill in terms of the cabinet, state at the federal level. And then states have been very creative in some other appointments, in special assistants, special advisors, so many of them. So they use this vehicle to facilitate the kind of healing that we are talking about. But for me, the most important way to actually bring about peace in the community, in the society, is through developments. It's through projects. But when you do, for instance, water, roads, railway that the federal government is focusing on, the beneficiaries are not members of one party. It's the entire society, it's the entire community. So the focus should be more on that, on development. And once you're able to achieve that, if you look at least the first and second republic, that has always been their focus. This patronage thing is a fairly recent thing from 1999 or from 79 or sort of. Otherwise, our leaders in the past, that has been their areas of focus. Developing their communities. In fact, they've been very fiercely competitive on that. That's why most of the major mega structures we have in Nigeria now can be traced back to the vision of those people. Until date, people are talking about Awolo, Sardauna, Azikwe. It's not because of the patronage they dispense to people here and there. No, it's because of their vision for society and seeing through those visions. And then also developing, people, investing in people who would later succeed them. Because they also knew that over time, they are not going to be there forever. So they invested, they identified technocrats, people who have the necessary discipline, skill, and ideological belief, like them, who will now work together with them. So there are many ways of practicalizing the inclusiveness we are talking about. And as I keep on focusing on it, projects and development, which is cross-cutting in terms of its benefits.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll be taking a break right now. When we come back, the program continues.
Or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something, make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live at the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's bring in again Dr. Kola Balogun, Senator-elect for Oyo South, who is in our Ibadan network studios. Earlier, you were talking about head hunting from as far range as possible for, let's say, chief executive. Doing all of this, we have the issue of consultation. But I'm sure you've listened to the other guests. If an electionary period has been so acrimonious, what kind of deft management is required for that chief executive, for instance, who is having to go far and wide to recruit the best hands to help him realize his campaign promises, deliver on the party's manifesto through projects and developments, as Professor Tahi Maman said?
You know, the reason we're having this problem at this particular time is because parties are no longer run based on ideological disposition of the political parties. Gone were the days in this country when you have political parties that were managed and were being run based on identifiable ideological dispositions. But now you have individual political personality bringing in their political philosophy. But even as it is, you can still, as a candidate, get the party stakeholders, the party leaders, the party members to share a common vision with you, to agree and to accept your ideological disposition. Once you do that, and you use that to run your campaign, to reach out to the electorates, and the key into your vision of good governance, your vision of commitment to service. By the time you get elected at the end of the day, it should not be too much of a problem because after all, you've all agreed on what you want to do for the people. And it is also in doing so that the party can survive, because you only have, at best, 4-year tenure. And so if you allow disagreement, lack of understanding, lack of cooperation between the party stakeholders and the elected officials to tamper with the yearnings and aspirations, that the promises you've made to the electorate, and of course, at the end of the day, you will discover that your party will not survive the next political season. So it's important for you, before you even get elected, to share your common vision, your ideological disposition, and get your party members and leaders to accept it and to also to key into it. So once that happens, by the time you get elected, everybody knows what is innate for you and for them and for the country and for your constituency. And so when you take it from there, I do not think you have much of a problem. Of course, you will still have some disagreement here and there, but it will not be too enormous as to affect the final objective, which is good governance, which is to ensure that you leave good legacy. And of course, in doing so, you're also protecting, in the long run, the interests of your political party. So stakeholders must cooperate with the elected officials. They all must agree that at the end of the day, they've made campaign promises to the electorates. They must also leave a great legacy for themselves as individuals, and of course for the political parties on which platform they are running for offices. So it is a collective effort that is expected from all stakeholders. As for the elected officials, you must carry, like I said earlier, you must carry the party stakeholders along. You must ensure that your party members are consulted in whatever you are doing. And by the way, we're talking about government of inclusive government based on political appointments. It is not only by appointing people into government positions that you can have those who will work and support your government.
All right, Dr. Kola Balogun, thank you very much. Just to indicate that we have some tweets that have come in from our viewers. We're going to try and take some of them now and then, of course, return to our guests. Festus Akimboyewa tweets, says Nigerian politicians should manage their electoral victory with maturity. The winners must see their victory as one for all Nigerians and must be willing to engage their opponents in order to unite our divided country.
And Daily Jackson Solomon tweets, it's honest on the path of the winners of the recently concluded general elections to harmonize with losers in order to down tensions and sustain short peace that the country now enjoys. Promoting infrastructure development when winners assume office is the best way to manage victory.
Now, Danjuma Shabiru tweets, politicians should continue to work tirelessly and initiate projects that will directly have positive impact on the lives of their followers and others, irrespective of inclination.
And Usman Ibrahim Yahaman tweets, it's important after elections for the winners to be magnanimous in victory, settle down quickly for governance and begin to implement the policies and programs sold to the electorates during campaigns. But reverse is the case. Oftentimes, leaders don't get over elections.
And we have this from Omobolaho, and the tweet is, now that elections have been won and lost, can we get on with the business of governance? Winners must be ready to eschew the I mentality and embrace the we credo. That's what was said yesterday on the program. Now, Omobolaho continues, the I mentality has always led to the promotion of cronyism and in some cases rewarding family members.
And Law Alpha C tweets, political losers in Nigeria blame the umpire and alleged malpractices. And winners thank the umpire and wish their opponents death.
A lot of frustration and politics of bitterness and rancor. What did we learn from former President Goodluck Jonathan? That's another tweet from Law Alpha C.
And Cecilia Okoroma tweets, during electioneering campaigns, we witness so much hate speeches by politicians that would not allow inclusiveness after victory.
Abdul, that's the Twitter handle, it says, if we are really serious, after winning elections, we should rally everyone, irrespective of political affiliation, to pursue the agenda of making the country great in the right direction for development. Unnecessary squabbles for selfish political positions would be inimical for our growth.
And Comrade Ngala tweets, running an inclusive government is very difficult because the number of political parties is too many. Which party are you going to consider in giving appointments?
There are 91 political parties.
91.
All right. Is it not 91 or 73? I don't know. 73 of them contested the presidency.
Actually, we lost count.
Yeah, we lost count of. Although a number of them will fall by the wayside once INEC invokes the relevant constitutional provisions. Yahaya Wada has the next tweet. The best way to manage electoral victory is by providing infrastructure for the benefit of all, irrespective of party affiliation. But that doesn't mean giving political appointments to those who may want to sabotage your government, to prove a point.
Exactly. And Abdul said, I suggest the parties should make every aspirant to sign an undertaking to abide by the party's choice for any position in order to ensure harmonious and rancor-free selection of political positions in the legislature after emerging victorious. Parties should be supreme.
All right.
I think that's what the APC chairman said, the party is supreme.
Well, there is, you have all kinds of positions on some of these things, some of them coming out now from our tweets. Gentlemen, again, let's look at one practical issue that has come up. We've discussed it on the program. I'm sure your excellencies were both present when we were discussing the issue. The rise of money bags and godfathers. After the electoral victory, then the godfathers we hear, particularly at the state level, it's more manageable, say, at the national level because of the broad powers that the president has. At the state level, there are instances where a godfather is said to draw up a short list of appointees. That's one, with portfolios assigned, finance, works, education, those ones with potentially heavy budgets. That is usually the first point of crisis. For those, of course, who are duly elected, and for those who have been in there before, it's a lot easier to manage. But in general, how do you manage the political godfathers who may also wish to exact their pound of flesh? We saw what happened between Ngige and the Ubas in Anambra, up to the time that Chris Ngige was judicially ousted. How do you manage that?
Well, I think to start with, some of the aspirants to political positions are so desperate. Desperation that causes it. You are so desperate that there is a godfather behind you and he dictates everything. So you have no choice. So like the case you have just quoted, that was how the problem was. It was desperation. But normally, yes, we agree, some people would have contributed to the electoral fortunes, either in cash or in kind or, played any other role. They are there. But I am very much against the one of just breathing down your shoulders and saying, you must do this, you must do that. In fact, in the case you are talking of, even to the extent of nominating even your AGC, so you find out you had nothing, you are just there as a figurehead. So I think we should not get to that extent. But we must accept that normally there will be those who have contributed to that victory. And in some cases, even before they brought their contribution, they would have said what they want. There's nothing wrong with that. And in some other cases, they are magnanimous and enough to say, okay, you give me what is available. Those things do occur. But I am vehemently opposed to the one that he has drawn out a list and told you who will be commissioner for finance, commissioner for works. It doesn't make sense. It makes the chief executive, it weakens him a lot. And in some cases, you find out after some time, that relationship gets sour. And when it gets sour, it becomes very dirty, and it can be very dangerous to a state. So I think such activities of godfathers should be minimized. They should be minimized. Just as you said, mainly at the state level, at the federal level, it is not that apparent. It's not. It doesn't occur very often. But at the state, yes, it's there.
But can it be possible to go against godfathers in this country? Most of the time we see during just these 2019 elections, we knew there was a lot of problems in some states where godfathers insisted that this is what should do. They were part of government. They were governors themselves, maybe for 8 years. They know how government runs. So how can they just come in and tell you how to run your government? Can we run away from godfatherism in Nigeria?
Yeah, we can. But at the same time, you are assuming that godfathers are just those maybe former governors or former this. Yes. No, there are all sorts of godfathers. You have the business godfathers who brings money. As far as it's concerned, it's an investment. Those ones are even more vicious. It's an investment, and at the correct time, he has to take his return on investment, and which may be appoint this, appoint that. I know cases where, just as you have just said, he insists on certain portfolios. So the appointee becomes the commissioner for works. He awards the contract. Then the other appointee is the commissioner for finance, who pays for the contract. So to him, it's pure business. But what we should just agree that desperation to get into office should not be there. Because once you have that desperation, you can give up anything.
All right, Professor Subo, let's have your take on this. How does this relationship get to be managed, on the heels of electoral victory, so that the business of governance doesn't suffer?
Well, the phenomenon is there, no doubt, and nobody would challenge that. But my observation is that it is diminishing, and gradually it will vanish. Without mentioning names, those kind of scenario that we had before, whether of money bags, appointing and dictating, even from the example that you mentioned, is diminishing. And with voter education, there's more awareness, public awareness about the evil of this kind of godfathers or people dictating and imposing appointees on elected governors. And even in this last election, you will see that in many places, the voters rejected those kind of candidates. So gradually, we will win ourselves out of that situation. So it's unfortunate. It creates big problem of managing victories. And in places where this was not properly managed, it cost the party a great deal. In some places, the political parties have not been able to recover from the damage. Your Excellency is laughing. So people are learning a bitter lesson the hard way.
And the electorate is more aware
And
now.
the electorate is aware. Yeah. So you can impose somebody as candidate, but they will wait for you
at the polls.
At the polls.
The polls. We now go back to our Ibadan studio where Dr. Mohammed Kola Balogun is there. You contested an election and you won. So what are the lessons learned from the 2019 elections? What will you take away from it?
Well, the lesson I have learned, well, let me also quickly say something about what we were discussing a few minutes ago. Our party politics in Nigeria is poverty-driven. And this is why you have electorates asking for money and taking money, and the politicians are taking advantage of that. But Oyo State has become a model now from the last election. Of course, we had people with a lot of money who contested for that election. and lost. And so the government or elected officials, when you find yourself in a position of authority, you must do your best to perform. You must do your best to touch many lives. You must do your best to leave a lasting legacy behind, because that is the only way you can sustain even your own political structure and your political aspiration. The lesson I've learned is that when you're in a position of authority, be humbled by it and do your best to perform, so that, of course, at the end of the day, when you leave in that office, whether you're running or you're not running, the legacy will be speaking for you. The record will be speaking for you. So for me, I think that people of Oyo State were kind enough to vote for merit. They were kind enough not to vote for money. They were kind enough to vote for good governance. And this is what I intend to achieve. I know the aspirations, the yearnings of the people in my district, and I have a commitment to perform. So the lesson I've learned is that political office holders must take their responsibility very seriously when you are in office. You must learn that you have a limited time and hit the ground running and begin to perform. Otherwise, by the time you...
All right, Dr. Kola Balogun, thank you very much. Very quickly, let's return to Professor Tahir Mama, Learned Senior Advocate. Still on the subject of managing relationships. You're familiar with the saying, the Godfather never sleeps. And now that there's electoral victory, you don't expect the Godfather to be asleep. So how does a victorious candidate manage the relationship with the Godfather who is awake?
Well, the primary solution to that, for me, is performance. He cannot wish him away from the beginning, but it has to be a gradual process of, connecting with the electorate and work and work and work. Now, remember, what is really the reason for the existence of Godfatherism? It is the monetization of our political process. This is really the primary reason. Starting from when a candidate decides to go into politics, you need to identify a source of money. All over the world, you need money, okay? But in our own situation, it's a bit more cash-based. So you need somebody to support your primaries, which parties generally have made extremely cash-based. And then now, a new phenomenon has emerged. As we are solving some others, another one is emerging, which is the syndrome of vote buying. This has come up very strongly in the last elections, and it's a very huge problem, because we thought initially that it was a problem for parties, primaries, and all that sort of thing. But for God's sake, how much would you need to bribe thousands and hundreds of thousands of voters? We've had situations where in some states, in the last supplementary elections, people were giving out as much as 25,000 to voters to get elected. So you need a lot of tons and tons and tons of money, and this is where the Godfather comes in. Because if you haven't accumulated so much money, you need somebody to give you support, because the parties are not bringing out that kind of money. And this is where the problem is. We have laws on campaign finance and all those sort of, but they are not working. So we need the relevant agencies to work on that and to minimize the role of money in our political system. If we do that, then elected officials will have some independence and some autonomy from their sponsors. They will not need a very heavily funded campaign structure. This is ultimately the solution to it.
Okay, Professor Tahir Mama, thank you very much. Just one last point so that we get a closing thoughts on this. Switching from campaign mode to governance mode has always been a major challenge for us. We've seen that, over the years. Some who are already in government will continue to speak as though they were on the hustings, looking for votes within the next 24 hours. And then society, of course, the pressure comes that everybody say, look, Mr. Governor, what are you doing? What are you doing? So the first 100 days, the challenge is there. So how does a victorious candidate or a victorious party manage all of these tendencies? The fact that the society is in a haste for development through projects and so on and so forth, and the fact also that they will be replying, you know, to the opposition. The opposition will be needling them, and therefore sometimes the environment gets polluted. How do you have a clear vision, get focused on it, and begin to work? Excellency.
I think that's a very vital point. If the new governor or new president has to perform, if he has to perform, he must try and be calm. He must try to understand his own environment. There are even people who are outrightly wanting to put you off, wanting to destabilize you. But you shouldn't allow that. You should have a focus. You should have a focus. At all times, there are fights involved in governance. The opposition is there. They're always at alert. But you as the chief executive, it's not your duty to be combative. Don't be combative as a person. You can always shave them. Let other people take care of such a position while you get focused, because you are elected to perform. You must perform. If you don't perform, because we talk of 4 years. 4 years is a short period. If you don't perform, next time you are gone. There's no magic about it. You are gone. So get focused, have good programs, face that, while still the political fight must be there at all times. While still doing the political fight, but fan it out to your people. There are people whose duty it is to be making noise on the television and abusing people.
Thank you, Professor Osimbo. Your final thoughts, please.
Final thoughts. Kingsley used key words, vision and focus, and His Excellency has also repeatedly used the word focus. I think that is the key. As an elected official, whether legislator or executive at the state or federal, you must have a vision at the back of your mind, which informed your decision to go into the race. Remain faithful to that vision. Stay focused. There will be distractions, but stay focused, because at the end of the day, you'll be judged by what you did, by your actions and the successes that you recorded. But again, to let the public also has a role to play in this. Nigerians get too worried when they see some of these frictions, whether between the legislature and the chief executive or amongst politicians. That is normal in the process. Even in the biggest democracies in the world, those frictions, those conflicts are there. So because politics itself involves constant conflicts, struggles as to who gets what, where and when, and this has to be understood by Nigerians, that the distractions will be there, the conflicts will be there, but so long as the elected official stays focused, governance will deliver to the people.
Professor Mama?
Well, there's consensus on the vision and the focus, but what I want to add to that is the practical aspect to it. Because if you just get elected and you are there, nothing is coming from you. You know, people are not really hearing much. They'll say, this one's gone to sleep. So consultations at that stage is what is needed. Engage your parties, other stakeholders who are not necessarily in your party. Engage even some of these town hall meetings. It doesn't have to be during campaigns only. You know, some of these committees, they have preferences as to what they want to see done in the period of your governance. So engage some of them. And then let there be clear policy statements coming out from time to time from the official. You know, people will know you are preparing to take off.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Now we have to go. Time is not on our side. As we round off the program, we need to thank, starting with Achike Udenwa, former governor of Imo State. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
And Professor Oseme Osumbo, a lawyer, a former senator of the Federal Republic, and a former governor. Thank you so much for coming.
Very much.
Professor Tahir Momo, we thank you so much for coming on the program.
A pleasure.
Kingsley.
And from our Ibadan Network Studios, we'd like to appreciate Dr. Mohammed Kola Balogun, who is Senator-elect representing Oyo South. Dr. Kola Balogun, thank you very much for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, so that does it for our conversation segment. Let's go over now to our sports desk.
Olympic 800 meters champion Caster Semenya says Lord Cole's claim that gender classification is needed to protect women's sports has opened old wounds. Cole is president of Athletics World Governing Body, the International Association of Athletics Federation.